It's our meeting to order, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll start with the land acknowledgement. And acknowledge that we're on the ancestral territories of the Mi'kmaq people. Thank the Mi'kmaq people of today for sharing these beautiful lands of the county with our ancestors, whether they came 400 years ago. They're all pretty people.
Hi, please.
Oh, sorry. Now, hopefully somebody heard that. So now, move on to the purpose of this early session tonight is to review our 21-22 consolidated financial statements, which were reviewed last week, and this would be by the audit committee. And so we have Heather Murphy with us again tonight as usual from Donald Murphy, and she's going to go over all these figures with us and make them clear. Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you. So it's my understanding that you have a copy of the financial statements that have been distributed. So I will, we did go through these in greater detail last week. So my wish is tonight, unless of course there's some more pointed questions, it will be a brief overview of the financial results.
You okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Heather.
So page 1 is the management's responsible for the financial reporting. This page has been introduced a number of years ago, basically outlining the fact that these are indeed the county's financial statements, even though sometimes they are prepared externally by the auditor. Page 2 and 3 is the audit report. So this is where we render our opinion on the results of March 31st, 2022. And I will briefly read the opinion that is essentially rendering that it has been indeed an unqualified audit opinion, which means, of course, everything according to the appropriate standards. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the county as at March 31st, 2022, and its results of operations and cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with the Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. Then it goes on to describe responsibilities of the organization and auditors. Page 4 is a consolidated statement of financial position. This reports on the various funds that are being administered and managed by the municipality of County of Pictou. Those funds would include your general revenue fund. That's the fund that does the tax collection. The water fund, and as it suggests, is the fund that administers the water operating. And the corresponding capital funds for both the general and water. And there is some reporting for the internet fund as well, mostly capital in nature thus far. There are quite a number of reserves that are being maintained. Those reserves will, of course, include your general operating reserve, and this is where the annual transfer of your surpluses are being maintained, and also including capital reserves and gas tax reserve. So the consolidated numbers that you see in the next few pages include the combination of all of those funds. The financial assets, makeup of those assets are cash at just over 8 million. Taxes receivable, the amount being disclosed is just around 1 million net of the amount that has been allowed for possible doubtful collections. Amounts due from federal government sources, which would include, of course, HST and capital grant that was outstanding at March 31st. Amounts due from provincial sources, mostly to do with some annual amounts from other provincial sources. Other receivables, There are some trade accounts that have subsequently been collected, approximately 548,000. New Scotland Business Development Incorporated, and accounts receivable, again, subsequently collected. Rivet,
First of all, on what page?
page 4.
Okay.
Partly down under the next one.
Riverton Guest Home Corporation, there was a receivable that was advanced to Riverton that has been paid as scheduled and subsequently again has been retired. And receivable from residents, these will include the water amounts outstanding at the end of the year. Total assets of the county on March 31st, 2022, equated to 13.5 million. Financial liabilities. Those amounts include joint expenditures that are being set aside, trade accounts, the 2.6 million in accounts payable, most of which includes some capital projects that have subsequently been paid. Prepaid accounts, these are amounts that are paid on taxes and water rates in advance. Short-term debt, 6.7. This is a debt that's in place at March 31st, having to, of course, relate to the internet project. Deferred revenue, these are amounts that have been paid to county in exchange for some future projects. Total liabilities equate to 9.9 million. Non-financial assets are mainly the infrastructure that's being maintained by the county. And there is a breakdown of that 60 million in terms of the general water and internet project. And that is disclosed at the net amounts. So the capital costs less the amortization. There's an investment in the New Scotland Business Development Corporation. This equates to the capital infrastructure or the injection into that project. And prepaid expenses is just a timing of those expenditures that have perhaps been paid in advance of actually being incurred. The total net the accumulated surplus or net asset at the end of the fiscal year, March 31st, 2022, is 64.3 million. Turning to page 5, the consolidated statement of financial activity reports on the revenues and expenditures that have been incurred by the county during the last fiscal period, with the budget and prior year comparatives provided. Taxes collected, net of amounts collected on behalf of others such as the school board, provincial correctional services and regional housing authority, is just around 15.7 million. Amounts collected in the prior year of 15.1 million. The major difference from that tax collection line is the deed transfer tax. Those amounts in the 2022 fiscal period were 1.3 million. In 2021, it was 834,000.
Yes, where is the monies for education?
That's disclosed on page 27.
So it's not in the expenditures?
No, it's a net from the revenues.
Thank you.
The deed transfer tax, however, is a tax that's collected, but also expended down below in the other transfer section that is being administered by the Pictou County Deed Transfer Trust, Transfer Tax Trust. Grants in lieu of taxes, again, still on page 5, 264,000. This amount is remaining similar year over year. Intermunicipal agreements, this is an amount that is collected from the town of Pictou. Sale of services, again, the description of all of those amounts included in sale of services on page 28. We looked at 205,000, most of which comes from the sale of wind power. Other revenue from own sources. The makeup of the 346,000 includes interest on taxes in arrears, building permits, and some other smaller amounts as well. Transfers from government. The amounts received were 734,000, and this was an increase over the prior year and the budget expectation. And that was from a extra amount provided by the provincial government through the municipal financial capacity grant that was essentially doubled during that fiscal period. Water revenue, 410,000 generated in revenues, and this is also remaining consistent year over year and to the budget numbers. Grants for capital of just shy of 3.5 million. Grants included the gas tax grant of 2.1 million. Also a larger amount than normal or in prior years. A typical annual transfer for gas tax is just shy of $1 million, or just over $1 million, sorry. And this year it was 2.1 million. Other amounts that were grants for capital are 1.3 million. That was a grant from the Government of Canada and also relating to the internet project. Other revenue of 117,000 includes resident share of capital costs in the general fund and interest on various reserve funds that are being maintained. The total revenue generated March 31st, 2022 is 21,229,000. The expenditures. The general government services of 2.9 million include, and again on page 30 provides for a greater detail of those amounts included in the 2.9 million. But legislative is defined as the warden and council expenses, and those were slightly down from last year and down from the budget. Budget number was 408, actuals were 388. General administrative expenses of just around 2.4 million. Budget amount was 2.6 million. So there were some amounts that were slightly lower overall in the general administrative costs. The amortization, of course, is also included as a general government expenditure, which is not a rated expenditure of around approximately 126,000. Protective services include the police and fire, bylaw, emergency measures, and building inspector. Those amounts expended within the protection services, fire protection makes up approximately 3.5 million. Fire protection is approximately 2.9 million. Building inspection is approximately 215,000. Those are the major amounts within protective services. Transportation services of 710,000, of which The general is expenditures, 402,000. Are again below budget. The budget number expectation is 477,000. Actuals were around 402,000. Most of those expenditures, of course, are weather-related events. Also included in the transportation services expenditure is approximately 300,000 amortization. Again, an unrated expenditure. Environmental health services. These are essentially the sewer costs and some public works expenses as well. Of the 3.9 expenses, 2.7 were for sewer and public works expenses, administrative costs and maintenance costs, and 1.2 of amortization. Most amounts were coming in similar to budget. Budget for expenditures were 2.6, actuals were 2.7. Environmental development services. This includes the GIS, Community Sustainability Development Officer, and wind turbine expenses are also included within environmental development services. The budget expectation was around 441,000. The actual expenditures were 364,000. And prior year it was 372. Included in the 582 is approximately 219,000 in amortization costs. Recreation services, the expenditure of 700,000. It would make up of grants that are provided to various organizations of approximately 213,000. And amounts to provide salaries in programming, as well as the contribution to the Pictou County Wellness Center. It's also included in recreation services. Those total amounts equated to 700,000. Of course, are below the budget number of 737,000. Cultural services include the library, both the regional and branch library. Those contribution amounts are similar, of course, year over year and to budget. Water utility expenditures. The budgeted amount was 493,000. The actuals were approximately 403,000. So amounts to maintain the water treatment and purchase of water were slightly down over budgets and over prior year. Other transfers and grants of 1.8 million. Included in that 1.8 million is the deed transfer tax that has been collected within the tax revenue and subsequently paid out to the Pictou County Deed Transfer Tax Trust. Other amounts included a grant that was provided to the Pictou Cultural Hub, and of course, it's paid to the municipal services grants. A new line that's appearing on financial statements this year is internet services and some operational type expenditures that had been incurred during fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. The majority of the 99,000 is source of supply, so the purchase of the internet. There were some assets, the values of those, some assets were disposed of 1.1 million, bringing the total expenditures to 19.4.
To give a brief explanation of what assets were disposed of.
Certainly.
Please. Thank you.
The, some of the carrying costs of the assets on Pictou County financial information included contributions to the Shared Services Authority for Eric for solid waste management. So those capital contributions are those amounts that have been funded by operating, but were carried as capital costs. So it's those amounts that are being reflected at zero going forward.
So it's defined as disposed of, is that really disposing of?
Disposing of those costs that are being carried on the.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay. So the net surplus position at March 31st, 2022 was a surplus of 1.7 million. Adding that to the accumulated surplus brings it to a position at the end of the year, 64.3 million surplus. Turning to page 6 and 7 provides for some changes to the statement of financial position in terms of the capital additions and how cash resources were generated and used. So those are basically the consolidated reports for impact for 2022. The next few pages, I'll just briefly say identify how each fund had generated surpluses or deficits during the year. Page 8, the general operating fund. Again, the fund that reports on taxes collected. Generated a surplus of 703,000. Those amounts, of course, were transferred to the operating reserve. Page 9, the water fund generated a surplus of approximately 119,000. See that approximately about in the middle of the page. So it is on track to eliminate the deficit within the water fund. Page 10 shows how capital for general infrastructure, be it transportation, environmental, which is essentially sewer costs, and some other types of expenditures, were all funded from internal sources. So it's funded from your general operating fund and capital reserve. Page 11 is the internet fund. And reporting on those operating type of expenditures during the year, approximately 100,000. So there will be a deficit that's carried forward for that internet fund. The internet capital fund, the capital that had been incurred during the year is 8.4 million. It was funded by.
No.
I actually do,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Tom.
can I go through the expenditures? Is that what you're doing that right now? 99,000? What does that comprise of?
No, sorry. That comprises mainly of source of supply. So the purchase of internet services. That there is on page 35 a breakdown of the details that make up that expense.
I want to come back to the main water fund. To say that under the surplus of that. That is what we paid for water to the expenditure. But collect. The revenue.
Right.
Now, what about? Air. Water from that is half.
That's also in those expenses. It's source of supply and repair and maintenance of all the water transmission, other types of expenses are all included.
Any further questions? Okay, over on that.
Okay, sorry, page 11. I was just speaking about the Internet Capital Fund. So the total additions during the year were 8.4 million. That was funded through 1.3 million from a grant, 6.7 million from the short-term financing that's in place, and the remaining from temporary borrowing, which means that there will be eventually some borrowing in place of that 388,000. Page 12.
Excuse me, question. So the Internet Capital Fund, does that include both the wireless and is that combined together? Should it be? Yeah. Oh, that's that. Okay. So how much of that 6.7 is attributed to the wireless and how much is it to the borrowing costs and all that? How much do we spend between each? I don't understand the way that works.
Don't have it broken down in financial statements like that. Get you that information, but we don't have it broken down in financial statements like that.
Okay.
It's considered fund assets, so we don't break it down like that to the financial statement. But we can get you that information. You want the breakdown between the wireless and the asset, how much assets wireless, and how much assets.
I have no concept of where we're at. So
Well, what is your
having everything blended together doesn't help me.
exactly what is your question?
So my question is, I'd like to know how much we spent on the Internet Capital Fund, how much was spent on wireless, how much of that money was spent on fiber.
So it's your question, how much of those 8.466 in assets, how much of those assets wireless, how much of those assets fiber?
Yes, thank you,
We'll get that right down.
thank you.
Okay, Bill? Oh, Eric, go ahead.
I think this is just a typo. Heather, it's on the phone expenditures for internet. It says page 35 is refer up with 99,475. The index should be forward.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, Mr. Woodrow?
Page 12 is the Water Capital Fund. So this reports on all the infrastructure additions to water. There was approximately 60,000 in capital additions, and that was funded again from mostly internal sources. Page 13 is the statement of financial position for the Water Capital Fund. And this does report on the assets and resources within the Water Capital Fund at March 31st, 2022. Page 14 is the schedule of reserve funds. I mentioned the consolidated results report from various funds. On this reserve fund, you can see the list of those reserve funds that are being maintained, the 10.9 million, the makeup of those. The main resources are held within the gas tax reserve and the general operating reserve. So the amounts, of course, that are reflected here are one of the major component is, of course, the gas tax and how the reserve fund funds other funds within the county's operations. Page 15 is the statement of property and equipment. So this does show general internet and water in terms of the infrastructure that's being maintained. the amortization and disposals of those various capital components. Page 16 reflects, of course, the changes within the funds and within. That also reflects the municipal position, the surplus of 64.3 million. The notes to the financial statements, 17, 18, 19, and 20 are the accounting policies that describe how the numbers have been accounted for. Further explanatory.
Back to. Engineering factor environmental health. 51.5 million. This position. That's silver, that water is
That's just water that you see in the 55.1 million,
51.5 million.
or sorry, the 51 at the top. That is sewer,
5.1.
and the 5.1 is just water.
You.
Goes on page 21. So this does describe the taxes receivable, the amounts that are being reflected as receivable at the end of the year, the 990,000. The total interest and taxes are 2.7, less the valuation allowance, meaning the amount that has been estimated it's possible may not be collected, 1.7. That's based on the policy. Reflecting 998,000. Taxes receivable, so there are some other amounts, of course, for water rates and charges. Page 22, note 4 describes how that valuation allowance has been determined. So there were some amounts that had previously been allowed for, subsequently written off, approved by council, reflecting, of course, a change.
On the first one.
Sorry.
Look at your balance in here in the middle of page 21. The figure of prior year 1.2 million. This year 2.2. Almost a million. There's not quite. Is that taxes that are to be collected?
Perhaps you can see those numbers again.
In the middle of the page, it says balance in year. See, prior year, 1.28 million. Under 2022, 1.22.
Right. So,
What are those numbers?
right. So what you're seeing is the balance outstanding of taxes at the end of the year for current year taxes that have been assessed are 944. Taxes that are more than a year old are 1.2. The total tax outstanding is 2.2. So what you're seeing in the comparative in 2021 is that total outstanding as well, 2.3. So the change is really only about 160,000.
Thank you.
Page 22 also describes the pension plan that the employees participate in. It is the public service superannuation plan. amounts being set aside and restricted from a tax net surplus in previous years. Page 23 describes the various area rates, the amounts showing taxes that had been levied and services provided within those separate types of components. There's a disclosure for those amounts that were paid to other boards and commissions. Of course, this is most significantly is the school board at 5.2 million. And other, of course, organizations within the municipality. Page 24. Note 9 describes some commitments that are in place at March 31st, 2022, and those being security for some borrowings for both Pictou County Wellness Center Building Authority, Pictou County Shared Services for the Aberdeen Hospital Renovation Project, and the rural broadband project. Of course, there is a temporary borrowing resolution in place for 31.5 million. At the bottom of page 24 is a note describing a short-term debt. Again, that was in place at March 31st, 2022. The amount outstanding was 6.7 million. Page 25, note 11 describes the amortization that's included in the various segments that are being reported on. Note 12, description of that investment in New Scotland Business Development Corporation, the amounts that have been guaranteed for the development of the New Scotland Business Development Corporation. At the bottom of page 25, note 13 is the disclosure around the remuneration and expenses of each council board and councillor. Page 26, description of the Riverton Guest Home Corporation, that receivable for the short-term loan that was advanced to Riverton, and it has been paid as scheduled. And as we sit here today, that loan has, of course, been retired. And that's at the end of the consolidated financial statements. The remaining pages are the detailed description for the amounts that we just reviewed.
Thank you for Heather for leading us through that. It's a lot of details there. I'm sure there was council and all of the details. The other thing is that, are there any further questions for Heather on anything to do with our financial business?
Asked this for many years and will always continue to ask. I recognize that your role as auditor is not to look at misdeeds. However, I'll roll through numbers if possible. Did you find any evidence misappropriation of funds or other financial misdeeds?
I appreciate this question every year too. So during the course of our audit, of course, we do test various controls, any controls that are in place. And through those tests, we find if there is one that those controls are working appropriately, or if there's deviations from those controls. So by doing so, and of course, the audit procedures we go through, we've not found any instances of fraud or misappropriation during the course of our audit.
Thank you. If I may explain, Board Member, I think it's critical that our general public knows that we ask that question. Okay, not because I'm trying to reflect poorly upon our staff or financial staff, that if something were to happen, he didn't ask that question, we would look at footage. That's why I asked. I'll look at CYA. Thank you.
Councilor Butler?
Just wondering, I'm wondering if Heather would comment on the general state of our finances as compared to, let's say, the last few years.
There's certainly been significant resources expended on the internet project, both monetary and human resources, I would suggest. But in terms of the tax collection and the monetary position that the municipality of Pictou County is at March 31st, certainly it's a very strong financial report.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm just going to move the acceptance of the 21-22 consolidated financial statements.
So seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded that we accept the consolidated financial statements up until the end of March 22. Are there any further questions or comments on the purge? Go ahead, Councilor Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to make sure council is aware that this is financial statements for ending March 31st, 2022. And we are late this year, so they them. So the audit committee brings to that at the last meeting. And just so you're aware that we are a few months late. I think September 30th was the date we should have been filed. So hopefully we'll have the problems cleared up this year. And there was two with internet reporting, getting the financials from the internet. And so hopefully we'll have that cleared up more quickly this year. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions before we call for the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Okay. Motion carried. Bring us to the conclusion. Well, I did want to say before we move on, I want to thank Karen in particular and all of her staff for all the good work. These are the multitude of numbers that we see in the maze going by us. You know, it will take a lot of hard work each time to make sure that it is accurate and we can answer the questions that we have for them. So, saying that, I think thank you to our staff for doing a good job to keep us on track and make it look good. Yeah, thank you. So I'll call for the adjournment of this meeting. And we're now going to do whichever one of these first. I'll ask Carolyn and Randy to come up front and carry them to the meetings.
You can look up here.
I'll just make any difference.
I just grab your sheet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Okay. Oh.
Okay, everyone, we'll get started here. I'll call the financial services meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. First on the agenda tonight is the approval of the agenda. Okay, moved by Councillor Boyles, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded nay. Motion carried. Any errors or omissions or corrections to minutes of February 21st, 2023? Any errors, omissions, corrections to the minutes of February 21, 2023? Hearing none, we'll consider those minutes approved. Next, we have correspondence. First one was uncirculated, a thank you from the Chattanooga Regional Academy for the donation to the breakfast program. And the second was a letter from Municipal Affairs Minister John Moore regarding a vulnerable sector registry circulated in their package. Any questions or comments on the correspondence? Go ahead, Councilor Thompson.
Yeah, just on the vulnerable persons registry, it's disappointing that the province hasn't seen this as an idea worth exploring, to pass it off out of hand. I would suggest that we invite, there's an advocate for this registry in Antigonish County. And if we want to hear the importance of this registry, I think we should invite this person. Her name's Ann Camosi, and ask her. She would probably reach out to us virtually. She's a powerful speaker, and she knows her stuff around this subject. It's lived experience for her. So I know that the Kings County has a registry now set up. And Ms. Mosey's focus would be on a province-wide standardized registry. She's thinking that there's a nonprofit model similar to what 211 is set up as. That's not a provincial government agency, 211. So I think there's other municipalities, including the HRM, that are looking into a registry, and it would be a shame that we don't do this as a province. So I would suggest that at a future committee of the whole meeting, we invite her to present to us.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Thompson. Any other questions or comments in the correspondence? Councilor Wyman.
Just found that, press through YouTube, Brian, the Nova Scotia Emerald, have they come up with their report yet? And that when they retain the responding and sort of thing.
No. And in all likelihood, we'll never see the light of day. They go through the exercise and it's really never shared. It's
But
hard.
ours, so, but in our local, remote, did they meet with them too? Or did they part of that?
We were part off. So we were like to send 2 reps to that debrief, so that didn't happen. But I haven't seen the report.
So over or 2 reps.
John Davidson and Lisa McDonald, both when it was held in November, late November.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Deputy Warden Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering if staff got the name of the council. Thompson said on Senate before the annual meeting on the chair and that, so if they got that name.
Okay, we'll move on to reports. First report we have is for recreation. What's your pleasures, councilors? It's moved by Councilor Palmer. Seconded by Deputy Warden Murray. Any questions or comments on the recreation report? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the communications report for the month of February. Moved by Councilor Palmer, seconded by Councilor Butler. Any questions or comments on the communications report? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the emergency services report for the month of February. You'll notice in this report now is included is fire inspector as well, fire inspections. Okay, moved by Councilor Boyles. We have a seconder. Seconded by Councilor Turner. Any questions or comments on the emergency services report? Go ahead, Councilor Butler.
My question, Madam Chair, is the number of medical inquiries or worked on in the River John area, it seems much higher than in ourselves. Is there a reason for that other than sickness?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Departments are able to assign a response category through AHS. They can choose those categories themselves. And so in the case of River John and Scottsburg, they've got a higher response level. So that like it's determined by call as they call it in 911. So that response category sees them have a lot more calls for medicals. So that could be short breath, trip and fall, those types of medical emergencies, whereas the other departments that you don't see reflected here with medical calls are more your cardiac arrests, and those types of calls, like high priority calls.
Any other questions or comments? Right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. Sorry, I lumped those together. Fire inspector's report. I get excited there. Okay. Fire inspector's report's been moved by Councillor Boyle, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Been out in the District 1. District. Yes, 3 and 4. Go ahead, Councillor Wyden.
Just for his inspections, and that's just to clarify for me, that is this something that is on a rotating basis, or is it scheduled to have these places inspected?
Yeah, all the places that are listed here will be on a rotating basis. So all places that he goes out to now are logged. And depending on what occupancy they are, so if they're apartment buildings, restaurants, community centers, they all fall under different schedule inspection. So as he does them, he's recording when he needs to come and reinspect.
Councillor Parker.
Yeah, I just want to briefly relate an issue that occurred in my district about 12 days ago. After I was shopping for municipal or from Airbnb to several different police offices, I was finally told to call our fire inspector. I was delighted, surprised. I got a hold of him around 3:34 on that Wednesday. He immediately went out after hours and tended to the issue and dealt with it most professional, most prompt. And I was also surprised because it was literally a very far edge of my district backwards. He knew where it was. So he attended to it, he dealt with it very professionally. His son was positive outcome. So I want to publicly thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Thompson.
On the fire inspections of the community buildings. Fabulous work. I've heard from some of the volunteers. It would be nice if there was I think it would be helpful to them if there was a list of vendors for some of the stuff that they're asking for. Because what this is creating is there's dozen people on this list that may need fire retardant or whatever, extinguishers. But they're going everywhere for the pricing, so there must be some suppliers that service that stuff locally that we can probably help these volunteer groups so they don't have to go search around for the stuff. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we can do as we're out educating, and that's basically what he's trying to do over the first little while, is kind of educate people more than dictate. So that would be a good thing to add to it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the warden's report for the month of February 2023. Moved by Councillor Dewar. Seconded by Councillor Parker. Any questions or comments for our warden? Seeing none, I have a question if you don't mind. That was Minister John Lowe regarding the Salem water, wastewater project. Is there any update on that? Did that happen before? Is that happened before our meeting, didn't it?
I did, bring that forward at the last meeting we had, but because it was February 21st, that was the day with I met with the minister and the deputy, so, it will be coming up later tonight, on the further, it's on the, public service. So, I can update you, but there's no real update from the minister. He just ruling that day, I guess. Nothing new there, but we'll have further discussion under the public service.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have accounts payable for the period of February 2023. Any questions? Okay. It's been moved by Deputy Warden Murray, seconded by Councillor Dewar. Questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Now, for information purposes only, we have included we have the the D transfer tax. There we go. And you notice we're down again significantly as compared we were to during the COVID bump. Still doing well as compared to years. Next, we'll move on to taxes receivable report. See that we processed 290,427.79 worth of payments month of February. Still have an outstanding balance of 3.1. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Parker.
I've been asked to bring this forward by one of the non-elected members of the audit committee. Very concerned that our numbers are, as a percentage of our tax base, significantly higher than they are in some other who use comparables with CBRA and the HR. That is something we will need to work on. We have tax accounts that are a decade or more. Years. And run tens of thousands of dollars. That should be concerned for all of us, because I know everyone sitting around here pays their taxes, so they wouldn't do that sitting here. And the vast majority of our residents pay their taxes. There are a few that are getting away not paying taxes. I have to work hard on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Parker. Any final comments or questions? Now we'll move on to number 6, Community Generator Fund request. Just remind everyone, it was 10% of the amount granted by the province. So we have 5 requests. The first one is from Abercrombie Volunteer Fire Department. Their total project amount is $45,000. So our municipal contribution would be $4,500. Hillside Community Society has a total project amount of $20,000 with a 10% municipal grant contribution of $2,000. Little Harbor Community Center, $24,099 for a 10% contribution from us of $2,410. And the River John Volunteer Fire Department, total project amount $39,116. Our contribution would be $3,912. And Scottsburg Fire Department, total project amount is $50,000. So our 10% contribution would be $5,000 for a total of $17,822. Go ahead, Councilor Wells.
Yeah, I thought when we were doing this, that it was going to be 10% off the cost, the whole cost, like of the thing knocked off the of what the province was given, it was the, but, like, we got a big generator, we got a 4,500 watt generator. Gee, I wonder what, these others must be some big generators. Oh, this one.
Okay, can I have a motion on the floor? Okay, moved by Councillor Wyden, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any other further questions or comments? Go ahead, Deputy Warden Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to Councillor Boyle's question, I know the Scottsville Fire Department is a propane generator and the cost of it is quite a bit more. That's propane goes to yeah. So they are costly. Thank you.
Any other final comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
So just to Councillor Boyle's point, this is 10% of the amount granted by the province or 10% of the project. That's what I thought we agreed to. That's what I thought it was 10% of the project. And then it was 80% covered by the province, the way it was explained tonight that we talked about this. And then 10%, and then they would have to come up with 5 to 10%, but this is less than 10%.
It was based on provincial grant. The province would give 80, we would give 10. And the remainder 10 would be based on the from the community.
Yeah, but this is not 10% of what province granted. They granted 80% of the total project. That's what confusion is with me right now. Is that the way it's reading here is that breaking out that those buildings are funded 90% of the cost of that? Is that correct? So the Hillside Community Center, the total project cost for that was 20,000. Is that right?
25 for the whole thing, but 20 we got from the government. 25,000 cost us to pay.
Can you use your mic, please?
$25,000 it cost us to get our generator put in, propane generators and one of the, that's not the Gilbert fuels.
So that would lead me to believe that it would be $2,500.
That's correct. Yes.
So can we get some clarification on that before we vote on this?
Thank you for that, Councillor Thompson. Brian, do we have final numbers on these, or are these just to clarify, please?
This is based off of the provincial awards.
So just to clarify, is this total project amount, or it says, I understand it says that here, but, or is this what the province is? Is this the province's contribution? Is this the 80%, these numbers?
This would be based on the provincial money. So that's where we'd be right, because the maximum was 5.
Okay, while you figure out that, Brian, we'll move on with our list here of speakers. Deputy Warden Murray.
And Chair, just wondered if we could go back and point the staff back to the exactly what an option was. I don't think that I should clarify that.
There's an extra provision on the bottom that
We did.
It says at the bottom, and further be it resolved that a community center may apply to the municipal council for a grant of no more than 10% of their project cost to a maximum of $5,000. Councilor Cracker.
My question is, are any of these groups asked to submit invoices? The sales cost per project, Let's give us 10%. And, you know, do we know that the project, money, the expenditure for actually for, creating a warming center or a personal generator or they, and I understand that electrical upgrades are going to be part of the project. My question is there any requirement for them to submit an actual account and invoices? Or they just ask for money?
Like a reporting.
Yeah, I'm reporting.
Yes. Okay. I'll, that to our staff. Is there a reporting? How's the reporting
They
work?
sent quotes of, if their original project, both, some did.
Some just sent them, what?
I feel strongly that we should be asking, not for quotes, but for their actual invoices. Otherwise, there's potential here for, well, it's appropriation of funds. And shouldn't just be handing them the money because they said, well, we got a quote for 50,000, or therefore we asked for 5,000. What was that quote for?
Actual cost.
Actual costs, and are they related to the project? If somebody decided it needs more tables and chairs. We need to know that the money was spent, what it was intended to be spent for. I have no problem with doing 10% of the project costs. That's what it says at the bottom. The note attached. I just think we should be accounting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cracker. Councillor Wyden?
I think Little Harbor sent a letter to the council property to Brian, and they had their actual cost was 24. I think their estimate they had received was 26. Debbie sent them. So I think we're in line with what 10% of the cost of the activate.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Thompson?
The first round, I had about 5 or 6 community groups out. In the last round, I got a handful as well with their applications. And I checked with the supplier that was doing the work, both the electrician and the generator supplier that went in, do the installation to make sure that the prices didn't change, and they didn't move. You know, holding the prices from last November. So. Just need to make sure that we have the right percentage here.
I'll ask Brian, is there any more information? Or-
Yes. The way we had interpreted was 10% of what the province were giving. It was based on provincial giving 10%. That's the way wrote the policy or the resolution. It would change. Abercrombie would get 5,000. Bill said we get 2,500. Little Harbor, I think, was in line. That's what their bill was, or that was submitted. River John would go to 48.89. Scottsburg wouldn't change because they're at the maximum.
Okay. So our totals will be different. Can we just clarify that again, just so we know what our total is and what we're voting on? So Abercrombie would be 5, Hillside would be 25, Little Harbor stays the same, and River John for 48.89, and Scottsburg Fire Department will stay the same, would not change. Everyone the changes there? Everyone read you?
That I have a question.
So further to Council Bracker's point, are we going to have is there a process in the works now in administration to have for reporting on this? Is there going to be something sent to these organizations to report back?
We didn't have, our basic policy was we were paying like the province advanced. I think it was 80%. roughly 80%.
Correct.
I think, and they do the work, and then they have to submit to the province to get the whole back. So ours was just tied more to the provincial money that it would help fund the, because that was part of the intent, was to help the community fund their forest. Right, so we had the provincial award granted. And that's where we got figures from initially, and they submitted two of them were quotes. I think one was the actual summary of the work complete.
Okay, just to clarify though, that doesn't answer my question in the fact that is there going to be reporting at the end? Will they have to report in anything at the end? Or is this, they just get the money and that's it?
Yeah, when it was adopted, there wasn't a reporting requirement built in, but to it.
Councilor Cracker?
Well, certainly it's sad that we didn't ask for reporting in the original motion. We clearly did intend to give 10% of the total project cost to the police. It's not 100% done that. I really feel that we need to ask, you know, if I grant 650 of my municipal services grant or that report, here we're granting up to $5,000 and it's just passed over. There should be requirement report. And we can do that retroactively. You have 5 years, we're gonna have more, and we know that. But it should be made very clear that they need to show us at the end of the day, because another applying work isn't even done yet. Should have to report within 12 months with actual invoices showing work was done. And we will get scrutinized, and like I say, at the tables of chairs, well, that comes up and voting. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilor Cracker. Councilor Boyles?
Yeah, it's just transfers through. So when we, when ours was granted, and then told us, you know, what we're getting, 20,000 off the 25,000 of grants, everybody like would have got one. So also that's the only really send that in. It's
All right, so I guess our motion is, we have a motion? Yes, we do. Councilor Wyman, yes.
Sorry, I'm just not sure what the motion is about.
Yeah.
I think that is misunderstanding. Not sure how we should get.
I agree, that was my my thought as well. So our original motion had been for what was presented here tonight. But since then, we've clarified it and we have new totals for our 10%, what our 10% municipal grant is. 5,000 for Abercrombie, 25 for Hillside. Little Harbor stays the same, and 48, was that? 48.89 for River John, and then Spotswood at 5. So that would be the new totals. So. And Stephen said, the motion agree to that? Okay, your seconder. Because you agree to that as well. Yeah, I think that's really a good one. The reporting, I think we deal with that after the fact. Councilor Palmer, did you have something you wanted to add?
What's the motion?
So the motion is to approve these grants, not as presented, but as amended, that we've amended here in the meeting, with our, and yeah, to accept those as amended.
Well, Councilor Dave said this. I think that they should send in the bill that was paid. And then we give 10% of that bill up to the maximum $5,000, because I know doing quotes, you get a quote, submit it, and then you get the work done. Comes in maybe 100, or it might come in normal. So I think that we should actually have, same as what we do for other grants, submit your invoices and you get 10% of that up to a maximum $5,000. That's fine. I thought, anyway.
So can we agree that the first, we'll deal with the reporting part of it or how the implementation of the plan in the second part. In the first part of this motion, let's deal with the actual figures of the dollar amount to be passed for the grants. Is that agreed upon?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, so the motion stands. We're going to vote on, the motion is to our 10% municipal service grant, or sorry, 10% municipal grant as amended. Okay? So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Is that a nay? No, okay, motion carried. Now, the second part we're going to talk about is how we'd like to either report or how we'd like to administrate the fund. Go ahead, Council President.
Should I have to make a motion that we require these five and any future applicants to report? I think we should leave the actual means of reporting up to our amendment. Should be a requirement to report. All back for these five and shouldn't hold the money back because these groups are spending on them. They do have to report. Find it in error, well, then we what due diligence, financially, we don't have to.
Okay, all right.
So
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Parker and seconded by Councilor Palmer. Go ahead, Councilor Boyles.
Yeah, just so you know, this too, the government itself, we have to show them we spent this 25,000 on the project, or they're gonna fall down. They already told us that. They said that if it's slower, you got to pay it back then. So it's looked after there too, but it's a good idea. Don't hear from them.
Due diligence for sure. Okay, any other final questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Okay, next we have our summer employment policy, and this is for our summer students. You'll see highlighted number 5 and number 6. Successful applicants will be chosen by the respective supervisor, which is change. And number 6, the salary for students shall be determined by the minimum wage for the province of Nova Scotia plus $3 per hour. So it's change from our past policy. Okay. Moved by Councilor Palmer, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we're going to deal with nominations for non-elected members of our committees, and this is through the 23-25 term. First is we have the Municipal Audit Committee. There's one position available, and Rick Fian, he is the incumbent. You want to deal with these separately, or? Yes, please. Okay. So, anybody want to make a motion? Okay. Councilor Wadding made the motion to accept Rick Fian, and seconded by Councilor Parker. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the Climate Change Committee. There's 2 positions available. We have Kyle McKenzie and Annalee Caldas McCaffrey.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Turner, seconded by Councilor Parker. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the Planning Advisory Committee. There's 2 positions available, but we only have one individual interested, and that's Earl Cameron, and he's the incumbent. Okay, moved by Deputy Warden Murray, seconded by Councilor Palmer. That position will be re-advertised, will it, Brian?
I suggest when we start making some moves. I believe that when we start making some moves on the land use planning bylaw, we'll have 2 applicants. Thank you.
Probably not wrong there. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the Riverview Guest Home. We have 1 position available, and we have 2 applications. The first is from Earl Cameron, and he's the incumbent. And next we have Mary Jean Rochon, you say your name, and her letter here is in our package.
We're looking to get on it.
Okay, Councilor.
Second motion.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilor Dewar and seconded by Councilor Butler that Earl Cameron be reinstated as the incumbent. Go ahead, Peter Boyles. Councilor Boyles, sorry.
Yeah, I just, the thing is that Earl's been there a long, long time, been on this committee, he's on the other, both committees, and they're a long time. You see, we got a position here that's, we got vacant here, Earl's incumbent, he's staying, and we got the one on the planning advisory committee. Maybe it's no wonder we're not getting anybody for these, because we're turning around, it's the same ones every year. If they're incumbent, they're getting in, and we're just passing by the ones that want to turn around and try and get in and do something. So myself, I just think it's wrong to turn around just because somebody becomes buddy, but he's going to be the one that's going to be on the thing, and then the heck with the other people that are new that want to get in here and try and do something and help it, you know, the county in itself, so I that's my feelings on it. I really think that we're gonna have to start thinking, if we're not gonna turn around, we're gonna the same ones in all the time, why do you have these?
Thank you, Councilor Boyles. Any other further comments or questions? I'll call, oh, go ahead, Councilor Thompson.
Just don't disagree with what Councilor Boyle said. But I think that we can all appreciate the Riverton Gas Home, the Valley View Villas going through some major capital work to that place, and we need a person of Earl's skill and experience on that board. Right now, knows his way around the construction side of things. So I think it's not the right time to switch. It's my
Thompson. All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay.
Aye.
One nay. Next, we have the Hector Arena Commission. There's one position available. Okay, so moved in second, Bain Barkhouse. Right, moved by Councilor Palmer and seconded by Deputy Warden Murray. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. And the last one is the Police Advisory Committee. There's two positions available, and the two incumbents would like to reapply, Gwen Savage and Gordon Gillis. Okay, moved by Councilor Dewar, seconded by Councilor Palmer. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Okay, next we have the PACE program, and as you know, it's PACE program is going to be available for homeowners to help complete their solar projects on their properties. Brian, do you want to give me take over?
The memo, I think, highlights the majority of the information. What we're looking for tonight is just to set some benchmarks so we can finalize what the program will look like. Partnering with the PACE Atlantic, it's basically a 90-10 split.